Hey everybody, Sayre Nova again. This time around, we are looking at, well, it says it for us right here. We're looking at 1948 Velocette MAC. And if you follow these videos, you know I have, in the past few years, become a super fan of Velocettes. Just really cool, interesting English motorcycles, if you don't know. The MAC was sort of their utilitarian machine. It grew out of the 250cc MOV, and they made a 350 out of the 250 by stroking the crap out of the crankshaft. So this motor has, I want to say off the top of my head, very close to the longest stroke of out of any bike I tend to work on other than a Harley Davidson. Harley Davidsons are ridiculously stupid, but you're talking about 96 mil stroke here for a 68 millimeter piston, ridiculously under square motor. But it worked, and in this time period, that was they didn't have the metallurgy to have motors spin terribly fast anyway, so you didn't run into the breathing issues, top end breathing issues that you get with stroker motors these days around. And what that meant was that this was a really torquey motor. You got power right off the get, and to your red line at 5,000 RPM or whatever, it just pulled really strong. So a workhorse of a bike, very utilitarian. At this same time, Velocette was also developing overhead cam racers and an overhead cam tourer. The KSS was the tourer, the KTT was the racer. So they weren't afraid of doing more modern and more high-tech stuff, but they actually found in some of the private testing that privateers were doing that a Mac tuned properly could go almost as fast as their very expensive and hard to make and assemble overhead cam racers. So these are pretty cool, pretty capable machines for their time. It's sporting the least favorite forks perhaps in the history of the world. These are Dowty air forks. These do not have springs in them. These rely only on the compression of air in the tube to give you your tension, your spring, you're holding your whole bike up. So it's kind of a cool concept. But if you have a slightest little leak in your seals, and there's a series of O-rings and seals in here that hold all together, if you have a leak, your fork will collapse and you got nothing. So they're a little bit, they were kind of a cool concept. I would say the material wasn't there for them at the time. As you know now, we do have gas shocks and things like that, and airbags and things like that. So the concept is still in effect in various ways, but this is pretty hard to keep going, and especially if you're dealing with a bike that's this old now, coming on an 80-year-old bike, it's pretty hard to find material parts that will actually bond together, work together with the right tolerances to even hold it. So what a lot of people do is end up just putting springs in anyway. He has not, and when the owner of this bike, when he dropped it off, he said, if you're going to park it for a long time, use the center stand because just in case that front fork collapses, the bike may fall over. But I applaud him for sticking with the originality. He told me the story he had to go through to get all the parts he could find and match them and make them all work. And anytime anybody wants to keep a bike as original as possible and will go to the lengths it takes to do it, more power to you. I think it's super cool. And it's a real pain. So it's a labor of love. What else about it? That's a pushrod motor. I referenced that and mentioned that, but say it explicitly. It's a pushrod motor, overhead valve, 2 valves per cylinder, only 1 cylinder, so you got 2 valves. Magneto ignition, so that's taking care of your spark and your spark only. Manual advance and retard for starting the bike, and start the bike, you retard it, and as you ride, you rev it up. That was the norm back in this time period, rather than automatic advance and different curves and things like that. Separate generator, 6-volt battery. The generator runs just the lights. The ignition runs just the magneto runs just the ignition. So they're fully independent of each other. One can fail and the other can keep going. And that's also how they did it back then. Independent non-unit construction, which means that the gearbox is a separate piece. Again, normal for the time. Not normal for the time was Velocette putting the front sprocket outboard of the clutch. So typically on Brit bikes, in your primary, you have the crank sprocket turning a chain, which turns the clutch wheel, and then that goes through into the transmission, and between the clutch and the transmission lies your sprocket. If you ever tried to change a sprocket on a BSA Triumph Norton, it's a pain in the butt. You got to take the whole clutch out and sometimes the whole primary off. On this, it goes, that's all happening, your chain wheel, your clutch, etc., but the sprocket is right here. So if you want to change your sprocket, real easy to do. And that also makes that means that the shaft is a little bit shorter as far as where the clutch is engaging with the transmission, a little bit more potentially effective engagement and whatnot. So it worked pretty well. The clutches on these, I cannot get into describing it without taking one apart. If you're a nerd about these things and you don't know what a Velocette clutch looks like, check it out. It's a billion little springs, and the adjustment on it is it's got to be just right. Some people say it's terrible and they can never get it right. I have not had a problem with it, and I think it's pretty smooth and silky smooth. So it's kind of cool. Velocette did things differently. They didn't just follow what other people were doing. They made their own style. They made their own part for it to complete a task, and they were really truly innovative at their time. The first time I took one of these apart, just looking at the doing a valve adjustment and looking at the timing cover and stuff, I realized how much more thought had gone into all this, just this one area, than on, say, the BSAs that I've run for years. And I really fell in love, and that's why I started building a Velocette race bike. That'll probably be 5 years in the making by the time I'm done. But I really just said, you know what? If I'm going to have a bike that's going to be expensive and difficult to maintain and crazy, then it better be something that's super cool. No, this is not. We got a loose nut in there, so that's not going to come off. There's your toolkit, though. That's where you would have your spare tools and maybe a map or something like that. Coming to the back of the bike, you can see it's a hardtail. These were hardtails until I think 54. And also the other defining characteristic of this particular Mac is it's a iron head, not like a Harley, but same concept. The cylinder head is iron, and it's pretty open because rather than having a lot of heat dissipation through the metal, they knew that the iron couldn't dissipate a lot, so they left a lot of room for air to come through. So air can actually come around the valves. Maybe you can see here, but air can come around the valves. Over the top of the whole head, there's a lot of room for stuff. The rocker boxes, the rockers sit distinct from the head, and air can pass right through between the rockers and the top of the head. So heat can come right off the top of the head and dissipate. They replaced this with the alloy Mac, they call it, which is a big honking aluminum cylinder head, more like what we're used to, where the aluminum is able to dissipate enough heat that they just expect it to go out through the metal itself and doesn't need as much airflow. And it's a lot bigger on the head. And I'm using an alloy Mac head for my project. Hardtail, as I said. And, these bikes were designed to not have rear suspension. And as long as you can work around that, they actually work really well. The geometry is good. It doesn't feel as unstable as, the sort of the chopper hardtails that we get, where people are doing all sorts of stuff with geometry, which looks cool, feels fun in a straight line, but gets a little iffy if you start pitching into corners. These actually keep up fairly well. The only thing I run into in this, other than discomfort, a little hurts on the lower back, is wheel hop. You don't have anything to stop the wheel from just bouncing when you hit a big enough bump. But other than that, it's pretty cool, pretty light. If you've been watching our videos, we have a Scott in here. We have a Brummy Scott. The weight difference between that, I would think the Scott being a two-stroke would be lighter. At least, feels like it's half the weight. It's probably 100 plus pounds. The Scott being 100 plus pounds heavier. These things are just incredibly light. There's nothing on here that doesn't need to be here. So even though the frame is made out of, cast iron, brazed huge lugs, furnace brazed huge lugs, it's heavy duty. There's only what needs to be there. The engine is made out of iron and aluminum on the bottom end, but iron top end. The wheels are steel. The whole frame is made out of heavier metals, but there's only enough of what needs to be there, and it keeps it light, keeps it simple, and it's just a really pleasant bike to ride. This was the first Velocette I ever worked on. It was not this one, but it was a different Mac. I think it was a 47. And when I got out riding on it, I said, you know what? You could sit at 45 miles per hour on this thing all day long. 350cc, just humming along, and you would never get tired. It would be so comfortable, so smooth. Really, really pleasant bikes to ride. So yeah, this was in here for it was leaking on the top end, just oil coming out all over the place. Not abnormal. As I took it apart, I found some hardware had backed off, some threads get tired and stuff. So we go through and redo all the surfaces and regasket it. It's done now. It's about to come off. And then we had a little bit of a floppy rear fender here from years of this being grabbed to put it on the center stand. The center stand is actually part of the fender mount back here. So as people put this down to use it, this gets worn out. So we actually welded up. These holes were all getting ovaled, so we welded up just a little bit to put some weld in there to make them grab tight again. and it should be good for another, geez, at least 60 years, if not 80. So yeah, that's about it. Love these things. If you have any theories about Velocettes, feelings about them, chime in. I love to hear them. And Brit bikes in general, especially the up until 1950, Brit bikes were the biggest in the world. They were the greatest in the world. Often the most actually ahead of engineering things, believe it or not, which is not what we think of them now, because by the time the 60s and 70s happens, they were left in the dust. But this period, up until the early mid 50s, they were really, still amazing machines and competitive with the whole world. So there's a lot of really cool stuff. I love hearing about it. So if you got some, chime in, let us know. And if you haven't yet, please do subscribe to the channel. It helps. Like the videos. It all helps us get more views. And thanks for watching.